Well, folks, the technical difficulties continue. I was recording this piece when I was starting to talk out my gaff, and then suddenly I looked at the screen and realized, oh, hang on, I didn't actually hit the record button. So I was just talking and waffling, and nothing got recorded. The voice has been recorded, but not the footage. As somebody who studied media in university a few years ago, that's a pretty basic error, and I need to step up my game in order to make sure this doesn't happen again. But then again, I did switch content, so maybe I'm just not used to it yet. Well, we're back again, folks, and guess what? I have this. This is the LCD version of the Steam Deck. I've had mine for 1 year today, in fact, and I wanted to talk about it, my experiences, what I love, what I don't love, and what I hope for the future, along with the competition, because trust me, in 2024 the competition is getting more fierce as more of the companies joining in, and potentially in the next year or so the shift from consoles to handheld PC market could be significant. And we mustn't forget Nintendo with their Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever the heck it's called when they do release the next gen hardware could be even more interesting. But anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's just worry about the Steam Deck and my experience 1 year later. Well, the first thing to do then is talk about the beginning. Why on earth did I buy the Steam Deck in the first place, and what made me appreciate it so much today? Well, back in 2022 when the Steam Deck first came out, the PC handheld market was different. It wasn't quite what it was today. Now yes, handheld PCs did exist. We had Iron Neo, One X Plus, or whatever the hell they're called. The other companies will be on the screen now. But there are plenty of handheld PCs out there that you could buy readily available from the Chinese market. So why did I not buy those and waited for the Steam Deck to come out? Well, this is quite easy. There are 2 or even 3 main issues with the handhelds coming from China. The first one was the companies. They were all companies from China. They weren't very big. They were not well known at the time, so the trust in them was limited. I didn't want to put my hard-earned cash into a company that I didn't know much about or didn't have much history associated with. The second reason, and this one's the main reason, they were all expensive. Most of them were costing around maybe £800 minimum, and you got very minimal specs in return. If you then forked up the money to get the better specs, so i.e. 8 core, 16 threads, 16 gig of RAM, and a decent iGPU, you're looking at easily £1,000+. Oh, not to mention the battery life was pretty, well, appalling for these kind of devices. And then lastly, they're all using Windows. On one hand, that's great. Windows is a fantastic platform for gaming because most games do work successfully on the Windows platform. Most games have been released there for years and years and years. But Windows on handheld, even today, wasn't great. And back then, it really wasn't great. The experience was just appalling. It was a faff. It was a nightmare. You had to plug in mouse and keyboards. It was just horrific. Yes, you can get used to it, but it wasn't a pleasant experience. But anyway, besides that, those main reasons were why I didn't buy the Windows handhelds. Not to mention, for that much money, you could buy yourself a perfectly capable laptop instead. That made more sense to me. When Steam announced the Steam Deck back in 2021, things changed. Now, there are 3 significant differences from Steam Deck. The price, the operating system, and the company. We all know Valve, they make Steam, and Half-Life 2, and of course Gabe Newell. So we all know who Valve is, we trust Valve, they've been successful with Steam for years, and they made it possible for me to say, okay, Valve is a company that I've used for years and years and years on PC, I can trust the company, they've been very good on the PC market, at least in the digital space anyway, and they've been pretty reliable. Then the price. I think the Steam Deck LCD was announced at around £400 or £350. I can't remember the actual list price. Again, that'll be displayed here, but I know it was around £350 to £450 in this country, in the United Kingdom. And again, when you compare the prices of this handheld versus the other ones at the time, that £400 difference was significant. That made me go, oh, okay, so now the price of the device is much more attainable, it's much more manageable. But the best part was the specs. They were not bargain basement. The Steam Deck was not stripped back. Okay, yes, it had a 4-core custom AMD Zen 2 CPU with only 4 cores and 8 threads, so it was down on CPU powers and clusters. But it had 16GB of RAM. The Zen 2 processor is still a capable CPU, even with only 4 cores and 8 threads. But the iGPU, the integrated graphics, was the star of the show. It was using the then at the time RDNA 2 graphics from AMD. It wasn't using the old Vega that these other handhelds were using at the time. It was using a more sophisticated and advanced piece of technology that was powering the PlayStation 5. Okay, it wasn't as powerful, obviously, but it still made a huge difference, and that's one of the reasons why the Steam Deck was quite appealing. So all those points. Oh, and also bigger battery as well. Not much bigger, but bigger battery. So on the face of it, the Steam Deck looked like to be a winner, but of course it using Linux, which I never used before at the time, along with just the general idea of the whole thing, made me skeptical. And still, for £450, you could still buy a second-hand decent laptop. Not as powerful as one for £800, but still reasonable. Okay, so the Steam Deck came out in 2022. It was announced, it was released. I didn't buy it at the time because I was still skeptical. I wasn't sure if the Steam Deck was going to fulfill my needs for somebody who wanted to go from gaming on a console at the time or my old PC onto the Steam Deck. So after a year, I watched, I waited, I listened, I watched every video that showed off the Steam Deck doing what it could do and what was good or bad about it. And then last year, in 2023, around this time, I pulled the trigger. I did, and let me tell you, that first week was just absolutely incredible. I absolutely loved the Steam Deck, and even today, 1 year later, even with the whole market changing, getting more competitive and having more devices, more powerful devices get released, I still recommend people buy either the LCD Steam Deck like I've got here, or the OLED model that got released back in 2023. I'll explain why now. So let's talk about what I like about the Steam Deck at this point in time. What do I like about it? Well, the first thing is the form factor. Yes, it's a big device. You can see here, it's this big. It's gigantic. It's a massive device. There's no denying that. However, with my medium to large size hands, look at that. The grip is incredible. It's so easy to hold the device and it feels one with the hand. The D-pad falls exactly where I want it. My thumbs fall on the face buttons where they want it. The analogs are easy to reach. The touchpad, which I'll talk about in a minute, are easy to use and feel quite nice to touch actually. You've got the Steam button at the bottom, and then of course you've got the 3 dots which activate like a quick menu. Triggers easy to use, easy to reach. They feel great. They don't feel mushy, too mushy or too stiff. Start and select, easy to read, easy to use. And of course, you've got the back buttons here as well. You've got 4 of them. These are handy for PC games that don't support the controller. And you've got the big 7-inch, in this case, LCD screen with touchscreen capability, making it a doodle to use when using it in desktop mode or SteamOS mode. So the form factor is excellent. And the build quality is great too. Yes, it costs £350. I mean, okay, mine was a bit different, it's £400. But anyway, the point is, it doesn't feel like a device built on the cheap. Valve have taken great care to build the product properly, and it feels well put together. After a year of use, there's no significant wear on anything control related. The analogs look good, the controls feel good, they feel just as stiff as they did a year ago when I first got my hands on the device, and most importantly, it's still a pleasure to use. We've also got, obviously, power on off, you've got SD card, got your vent there for cooling, obviously, headphone jack, I'll talk about that later on, and of course your volume rockers as well. So in terms of holding the device, it's great. So how about turning it on? Well, let me do that. Okay, so the device is on now, and this is what my device looks like. Of course, it's been used for over a year, so don't expect it to be different on your device. It will be quite a bit different. But what I love about the Steam Deck is just how easy everything is to use. You've got your quick menu, tells you your performance overlay if you want to use that or not. You've got your frame rate, tearing, everything. It's just amazing how simple and easy it is to use, and that's the beauty of SteamOS using Linux. When I first heard the Steam Deck was using Linux, I was very skeptical because Linux was something that I'd never used before, and at the time, before the Steam Deck, compatibility with games was quite low. You know, a lot of games would work, but they had problems. Somehow, I feel Valve have accelerated the Linux operating system into full force, because since I've had it, not only do many games that didn't work initially now do work on Steam Deck, more importantly, the games themselves perform pretty well. Yes, you've also got Proton layers, which I use heavily on Steam, another great thing, but for the most part, a combination of Valve and the community have made it possible to allow me to use this device to replace my Windows PC entirely. No, it's not perfect, and no, there are times where I wish I still had Windows. Luckily I got my PC back now, but for the most part, Valve's device does a great job of letting you play the games you want to play using its operating system and its hardware. Other things about Steam Deck that I love, the frame rate limiter. That has been one of my most used features ever on the Steam Deck. I always cap my games to whatever frame rate that I want, and it's just so much better for consistency and for allowing the Steam Deck to not use too much power where possible. It's actually been quite helpful in emulation. If you're playing a power game that runs at 50 Hz, set the Steam Deck to 50 Hz. Don't enable V-syncing, but enable frame pacing and all the other stuff you need to make the emulator run as smooth as possible. And I promise you, the experience is so smooth you won't believe it. It's really amazing, and it makes me want to play more power games where possible. Obviously not every system, you know, but where there's only a power version available of a game, or you need the power version because the 60 Hz version from the NTSC region is a bit too much for Steam Deck. The 50 Hz on this using the frame limiter makes it much more bearable to use. Essentially, just to cut to the chase, this is a PC that has all the PC components that you would expect from a modern PC. So it's got built-in Wi-Fi, speakers built in, see, nice screen, controls. All the hardware from a PC is in here, but it's molded around a shape that is essentially a controller with just these two pads on as well. It's so difficult to talk about the Steam Deck because there's so many things about it that I just love. I'd be here for 1 hour if I was to talk about everything I like. So I'm going to try and simplify it from this point onwards. Other than all the things I just said, it's the software. The software really makes the Steam Deck, and its support, by the way, the community support for this device is unprecedented. I've never seen a device have so much community support in 1 year. Never. Never seen it on PC before, on Windows, never seen it on any other handheld, never seen it on consoles. This thing, when it comes to community support, is the greatest device I've ever seen. And thanks to that community, it makes the Steam Deck the more viable choice when it comes to handheld gaming. If you've got a problem, just Google it, or just ask the Steam forums, or just YouTube it. And there's always somebody out there willing to help you and explain to you how to get either a game to work, or why it's not working, or how to get it working again. It's just incredible. Okay, so at this point I've kind of waffled on a bit. I'll get into one more thing I love about the Steam Deck, and that's emulation. Yes, emulation. Everyone's least favorite, most favorite aspect of these handheld PCs. But the one thing I loved about the handheld PC market in general is the idea of emulation, and that's because emulation was predominantly used on a PC. Obviously you go onto PC, you get the ROM, you get the BIOS, whatever, and you play it. So to me, to have a handheld version of that with the controls already built in sounded like a dream come true to me. And honestly, it was one of the reasons I wanted a handheld like a handheld PC. I just figured if you use the PC app with PC hardware, it should be not only more compatible, but should work better on this PC. And let me tell you, emulation on the Steam Deck has improved greatly since I first got it, and bearing in mind it was already good when I got it a year ago. All the emulations software have improved drastically. More games work now. They take full advantage of the architecture of the iGPU, and even though the Steam Deck only has 4 CPU cores and 8 threads, the emulated devices are quite well optimized to work with that, meaning that you don't have to get a powerhouse PC now in order to play games. I always remember when I first got the PC SX2 emulator back in 2016 with my PC. Now, it did work, but a lot of games just did not work very well, and the emulator was not that well optimized. You fast forward now 8 years, and suddenly, PC SX2 works beautifully on a device as cheap as the Steam Deck. I never thought I'd see the day where a handheld device could work so much better than my old PC did 8 years ago, and bearing in mind my old PC is still technically a bit more powerful than the Steam Deck, although its GPU is quite outdated. So emulation on this thing is fantastic. I regularly play PS2, PS1, Sega Saturn, and I also play a bit of GameCube here and there, but anything below PlayStation 3 works beautifully now on Steam Deck, and it is a joy. And the best part is, most of the games I play on emulation don't need a lot of power to run, so the battery life is actually quite good. When it comes to 360, currently it's not working. Xbox Original, that's never been great. Even on powerful PCs, original Xbox still doesn't work very well. PS3 does work, but only, I'd say about 50% of the games work, and the others run a bit too slowly on the Steam Deck. But I've not dabbled with PS3, 360, or anything past PS2 and GameCube, so I can't tell you how good it is today, but I've heard there are improvements on the PlayStation 3 side. So that gives me hope that one day the 360 emulator will work on Steam Deck, and when it does, in theory, it should be easier than PlayStation 3, so maybe 360 games will work a lot better than they do already. We'll see. Okay, so those are some of the things I love about the Steam Deck. What don't I like about it? What are its limitations, and what do I still want to see improvement from Valve going forward on the Steam Deck? Let's talk about the battery life first. Now, the OLED model does improve this significantly more. That one has a bigger battery, a more, that's what I'm looking for. It has a more efficient CPU, even though it's still the same Zen 2 architecture, and it's got various improvements to weight and stuff like that. So, but even so, even with the OLED model coming out, the Steam Deck battery life is still not great. If you're playing a lighter game or emulated games, the battery life can vary from around 3 to 8 hours. On PS1 games, I tend to get around 6 to 8 hours. On most PC games, it varies a lot. It depends on the power profile and how much power it needs to run. On average, I'm getting about 3.5 to 4 hours. If you're playing a very demanding game, emulator or AAA or whatever, the battery life will significantly drop to 1 hour and 30 minutes. So you can imagine that's not a lot of time to play. But if you do little things such as tweak the graphics, tweak the wattage, tweak the CPU and GPU usage, you can get more battery life at the cost of performance. So if you want a longer battery life, you have to be prepared to sacrifice performance, which could mean lower frame rates, lower graphical settings, or both. But other than that, I mean, the battery life for me, because I don't take the Steam Deck out that much, and because I'm not somebody who travels a lot outside this country, for me, the battery life has been sufficient. And of course, I'm nearby chargers anyway, and it does use USB Type-C. So it's very easy and convenient for me to go to my computer desk, plug it in, and just let it charge, and I can play. And then once it's charged enough, I take it off again and carry off. My brother tends to use battery banks placed here on the back. So if you want to use a portable battery charger, that's an option for you, and it will keep the Steam Deck going for a bit longer than normal. Again, you've got the OLED model, which is even more efficient, and I do recommend that if you want the best battery life. But if you want to get an LCD model like I've got here, I wouldn't worry too much about the battery life, because as long as you know what you're getting yourself into, you can adjust and plan for that accordingly. But if the battery life is still not great for you, I do recommend the power banks, the OLED Steam Deck, or maybe just a different solution altogether. The Steam Deck is not for everyone. Another issue I have is the software. Now yes, Valve is great at updating software, fixing problems, and changing the operating system enough to where it can allow Steam Deck users to have a more comfortable experience. But I find that a lot of times when they change the software or update the software, it breaks other softwares that work on Steam Deck. We've already lost the Decky Loader. Some of the apps on Decky Loader don't work correctly anymore, like the vibrancy, although Steam do build that into the display settings somewhat. We've also lost. Also, emulators do work still, but I find that when the update comes along, it either causes a problem with the emulator where it either doesn't run anymore, you have to reset it and restart it to make it work again, or in the case I had yesterday, I updated something on the desktop mode. I went to update EmuDeck, and EmuDeck's actually changed a lot now, by the way. It's updated once again, and it did something to where it had to reformat all my emulators. So unfortunately, all the progress I had on the memory cards were lost. Therefore, I had to start all the games I was playing again. As you can imagine, I was playing Most Wanted on PS2, and I was just about to get to Razor to beat him again for the 4th time in nearly 20 years since I first played the game back in 2005 on PS2. Can you imagine my upsetness when I saw I had to start again from scratch when I was just about to finish? It's an issue that keeps cropping up again and again, and I hope Valve, when they make the next update, stop breaking compatibility or save data with emulators. This is more likely to happen on the beta channels or the preview channels. It doesn't happen so much on stable channels, but even so, it still has happened on stable channels, and I hope Valve can fix that in the future. I don't want to keep losing my data every time an update comes out or I have to worry about it. It's a bit unfair. Another issue with the Steam Deck is the screen. Now, the OLED model fixes this, but the screen on the LCD model is not fantastic. It's a bit grey, it's colourless, at least initially, until you adjust the settings, and it's just a plain panel. It's not bad, I don't mind it, it works, it gets the job done. It's not a terrible screen, but Valve could have done a bit better. They didn't need to go with OLED, they still could have gone with an IPS LCD panel, but the Livonia Legion Go and the ROG Ally both have the same type of screens, but they're so much better with more refresh rate. Now, I don't care about refresh rate that much. Some people do, some people don't. The Steam Deck has 60, that's fine by me, but others want more. Again, the OLED gives you 90 Hz, which is quite a nice improvement. The ROG Ally, the Legion Go, which my brother actually owns, they both give you 120, which is going to be great for those games that do take advantage of that frame rate. But overall, for me personally, I just think Valve have a winner of a product on their hands. They've got it executed right. Yes, there are problems. Yes, Linux is not the be-all end-all. There's still games that don't work too well on it. And yes, there's little quibbles here and there that the Steam Deck has. But as a product, it's a well-balanced product. It's a well-made product. It's a well-thought-out product. And it's a product that continues to give me joy. It still continues to give me joy after 1 year. I just love everything about it, barring the issues I just said, and I highly recommend it to most people. It is a great way to play your games on the go, away from the PC, and the Linux operating system does not hold it back one bit. Again, there's so much to talk about on Steam Deck, and I could be here for ages. I didn't mention the trackpads, which are fantastic for playing older games or for navigating the operating system. You've got desktop mode, which is basically a fully built-in PC with Linux. And there's just so much more to enjoy. Oh, and even the speakers. These speakers here are quite good, considering that they're built in. They're still some of the best you can get on a handheld PC today. Although the DAC leaves a lot to be desired. But yeah, this bit here. The DAC itself isn't that powerful, although you can use volume boost in Decky Loader, and that will boost the volume a bit, but then there's no equalizer. So unfortunately, you can't boost the... You can't change or boost certain frequencies like bass, treble, and mid-range. So anyway, that's just my rambling thoughts on the first year of owning the Steam Deck. Do I still recommend it? Of course I do. It's still a wonderful device that I can recommend to anybody, and the price now being quite cheap, you can find these used for below £300, is a game changer, and I recommend it. If you can, I would suggest going for the OLED model. It's more expensive, but you get better battery life, a more ergonomic feel, a lighter Steam Deck, a better screen, the OLED, and better battery life. That's the big one. And as for the other Windows handhelds, I'm not going to say I don't recommend them, because the ROG Ally and the Legion Go, and of course the upcoming MSI Claw, do seem to be good handhelds, and I've used the Legion Go for my brother, and that was quite a nice experience, especially with that massive immersive screen. But Windows and their overall software compatibility is still limited and still needs a lot of work, whereas the Steam Deck is a much more polished product. There's nothing stopping you from buying any of these handhelds and enjoying them, because my brother tells me that he loves his Legion Go, and fair play to him. It is a nice device when it works, and trust me, when it works, you know. Anyway folks, hopefully you've enjoyed my speech and my thoughts on my first year of owning the Steam Deck. Hopefully it was insightful and interesting. If you've got any questions about the Steam Deck or anything I've said in the video, please let me know. And of course, if you've got a Steam Deck, let me know how you're getting on with your particular device, whether that be LCD or OLED. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.